Right then, thank you everyone, and appreciate Rosie taking through the second half. Now we're into our panel session now, and I'd like to introduce go clockwise around as I see it, editor of convenience store Aidan Fortune. We've got Steve Moore, head of retail at Parfetts. We've got Rob, I've gone the wrong way again, haven't I? We've got Steve O'Neill first, Corporate Affairs and Marketing Director at PayPoint, and then Rob George, last but not least, Director at McColls. Welcome everyone, thank you for being part of the panel session. I think the first question really to everyone is around some of the biggest challenges that our sector and as a nation we're all facing around the cost of living and the cost of trading. Aidan, I'll come to you first. What are retailers telling you about how they are changing the way they do business right now to better appeal to customers that are cutting back and to make sure they can keep trading themselves?
Good question. Retailers, they're extremely worried about this. For their customers who are worried about the cost of living and how they can afford their groceries, they're being more transparent about their promotions, their deals, make sure their pricing is, that so customers, they know what they're going to be spending as soon as they get into the store, no surprises, and having a value offering where possible. From a cost of running the business, we were both at the convenience conference on Tuesday and at the awards. Every retailer I spoke to, the rising cost of energy was their top priority. And they're having to be forensic about their energy usage. And we'll touch on the investment in energy technology later on, but that's been their main priority at the moment, looking at that and how they can reduce their energy bills over the next, foreseeable future, I guess.
Yeah. Steve Moore, I'll come to you next. Same sort of question really, but from a business with 650 stores, integrated supply chain to an extent with the wholesale arm as well, how is if at all, how is the product mix changing to support those customers?
I think it's early days at the moment, but what I would say is certainly listening to retailers, their concern is around what they can do to mitigate costs at the moment. So turning down non-essential things like fridges, turning off overnight, putting timers on. That's the key thing for me. I think what we've not really seen a massive change yet in the mix, and I think we've probably had a fantastic period of trading through the summer. I think it will really start to bite probably over the next 6 to 8 weeks as we get into colder evenings. So I think it's one to watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rob, obviously a huge network of stores, looking after the customers on that network of stores. Is there any indications you're seeing right now, or as Steve just mentioned, are we still in sort of the heights of summer and perhaps still too early to tell where the big changes are coming?
I mean, yes and no, right? So we're out of the hot summer period, as Steve said. It's been really good, and we'll see what customers do into winter. I think take away the specific situation with McColls, the CMA, and Morrison's at the moment, it just feels like an almost impossible challenge to solve. Because on one hand, you've got customers that are feeling the pinch and questioning, really searching for value, what they're doing. And on the other hand, retailers are being hit by cost of goods inflation, energy prices, trying to get enough colleagues into store and trying to get enough supply into the store. So it's a really, really difficult challenge for everyone to solve.
Yeah. And then coming to you, Steve, from a services, sorry, Steve O'Neill, two Steves, so I'm going to have to keep remembering. From a services perspective, how are you adapting what you offer and work with the government? I see you've been doing some work with the Help Households campaign. Talk a bit about that and how you're gearing up for this next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, so I guess we're seeing it from a number of angles, given the number of different things that we're plugged into. I mean, I guess if you started from a consumer perspective, I'd probably agree with Steve and Rob that so far there's not really that much change in terms of consumer behaviour. In fact, if anything, if you look at something like our parcels business with Collect Plus, actually that's doing some weeks now are as big as Christmas a couple of years ago. So actually kind of there's certainly demand out there, and that's kind of coming through through consumer spending. Energy payments are holding steady, although what we have seen over the course of the last couple of price cap changes for consumers is that you get a big surge through stores just before the new cap changes, and we're expecting that, and obviously kind of working with retailers from an operational perspective just to make sure that they can help customers when they're kind of walking in to do that. But I think on the flip side, looking at what we're doing to, I guess, feed into and support retailers and consumers in the communities that they operate in. So we've been heavily plugged in, probably for the last few years, actually, just around dispersing cash into the hands of consumers in communities that really need it. So there was a lot of that happened through COVID. That's continued into the household support funds. So, you know, to pluck an example out, in Derby about 4 weeks ago, about £1.5 million was distributed over just over 100 stores in the space of a couple of weeks. I mean, it's amazing, right? You know, kind of like just in terms of the effort and the sort of the endeavour that's been put in through retailers. And I think that means that we're having to obviously kind of look at operationally what that means and how we support retailers to deliver that. So I was struck by your 99% cash acceptance figure, but then there's the big question around cash availability. So we estimate, I mean, we hear very different things, but we're seeing, you know, between probably an average of 30 to 40% cash availability, just in terms of sort of, you know, the amount of transactions that sort of generate cash to then be able to get to be given out to customers. So we're having to do things like put floats into stores to help deliver some of these things, because obviously it's a really vital community service, and we need to constantly be on our toes to think of ways in which we can help our retailer partners deliver those services. Yeah, absolutely. Let's stick on sort of cost of trading for a moment. And I mentioned in my presentation earlier about investment and what I anticipated investment plans doing over the next year. Rob, from your perspective in that store estate, are you actively looking at investing in energy saving measures to try and reduce the overall load over the next year, or is it something that you're sort of almost at capacity already with what you can do?
Yeah, it just goes into the overall hopper. I think, you know, as ever in any convenience business, I'm sure particularly ours with last year's trading, I think there is always more to invest in than you possibly can. I mean, there's maintenance of refrigeration, there's environmental, there's cost saving activities. I think the reality from the increase in energy prices and the way that's going to hit stores, I really struggle to see that any mitigating activity will pay back quick enough when there's that level of pressure that is going to come through on balance sheets from the cost of living at the same time. So yeah, you just have to look at it case by case. So of course, where there are targeted investments to be made that make you more efficient, more environmentally friendly, and mitigate some of that costs, dive in. But is there a, you know, from our perspective, is there a wholesale rapid payback way of spending money to mitigate this? No, there isn't. Yeah. No, I think that's right, and it's it's why it's such a challenge. Is that there's, you know, we can't just turn the fridges off because we've got to keep the product cool. And you know, it sounds obvious, but lots of other businesses say, oh, we'll just reduce opening hours. So, well, we can't really do that. Steve Moore, what are your retailers telling you about what they're doing right now to try and mitigate those costs?
What I'm hearing a lot of is they're looking at staffing hours, potentially reducing hours, getting back themselves behind the counter. I think one of the things we're seeing a lot of now is retailers hunting for better deals. I think, you know, certainly from our perspective, when I look around the cash and carry, you know, we've got a trade week on this week. I'm seeing a lot of competitor fleeces in the depot, lots of people hunting down. So I think it's going back to that kind of really getting out there and trying to understand where they can save that money. And I agree with Rob. I don't think if they look at, you know, investment into store, it's going to pay back anytime soon. Although we do still see a number of retailers actually investing currently into redeveloping stores and looking at more energy efficient models, but maybe more of a bigger picture with that. But I definitely feel that probably retailers have gone back to type and really started to search for better deals around, and looking even at potentially reducing some stock holding, and increasing in others. It's a real mixed bag out there, if I'm honest. You know, I've got some big retailers that are holding lots and lots of stock, and others that have kind of, well, I'm reducing that down, and I'm going to go and look wherever I can to get better deals.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to mix in sort of bad news and good news, and not do all the challenges. We've got more challenges to come, certainly. And I would say if you're watching and you have a question, please put it in Slido, and we will try and get to those questions to our panel. But I want to try and go on a slightly more positive note around technology and services. And we've seen a lot of change in the sector around what's being offered. Aidan, when you're going around stores, when you're looking at what retailers are doing, when you get really to the cream of the crop, what technology is in those stores that is making a difference, not just to their operations, but to the offer to customers?
Well, it's been touched on in the report. I mean, digital shelf edge labeling, it's about 6% of stores have invested in it. I was doing some awards judging over the summer, and I spoke to managers, and some of them, one said that she could never take off a Monday because of the changing prices, promotions, and things like that. And now with shelf edge labeling, she's able to do that because it's a massive time and cost saver, and it's more sustainable as well. If you think about the amount of paper that we're no longer using on that, I appreciate it's an investment, and it's not for every store. But I mean, it can look fantastic. I've seen some stores where they highlight the fact that they're cheaper than their competition nearby for certain products. So that's a great offering for consumers. They don't have to be on their phone searching, worrying that this maybe should I go to another store for a better deal. They can flag it up right there. So yeah, that's when I see that, I know that the store they're thinking about the future. They're really it's as Rob said, no investment is going to pay back overnight, but this is something that's going to just kind of keep ticking away and reducing the overheads over a long period of time.
And Steve O'Neill, in terms of the service provision that you're seeing in the stores that have your terminals, are you seeing those retailers providing a wider range of services, both through your terminals and through sort of other things in the business, and I guess juggling quite a lot for customers right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a reality for so many years that convenience retailers are like a Swiss Army knife in terms of the services that they have to deliver, and as more mainstream services start to retreat from the high street at large, actually kind of a lot of that service provision falls back on convenience retailers. I mean, just on the technology point, I think it's less about having the technology installed, but more about what you do with it. So, certainly, two good examples from our realm are, I guess, linking back to what you were saying about free ATM provision. So the counter cash service that we launched last year, so effectively that's a kind of cash back without purchase at the counter. So it's using the terminal that's there already. You don't need another box. And I guess plugging the gaps for free ATM or free cash withdrawal provision where there isn't any in local communities. Actually, that's, for the stores that have adopted it, that's sort of, seen quite a big growth over the last year. So 20 million quid withdrawn. The remuneration model sort of works differently to cashback as it would do normally. So the retailer benefits, the customer benefits. So I guess, we're looking for more of those, I guess, what you call sweet spot sort of, propositions where there's a community need, there's a retailer benefit, and there's a consumer benefit as well. The second part of that, and sort of linking into the value piece, is around, I guess, also using the technology to kind of talk to customers about value. So, customers are definitely on the hunt for sort of, better value at the moment. And brands are obviously looking for ways to engage. So we've been doing some work with some FMCG brands about how do you use the kit that's in store, receipt advertising, screen advertising, to talk to those consumers with some really good results, actually. And I think as we go further in over the next sort of 12 to 18 months, it's about how do we deploy that to more retailers, more consumers, to kind of help them offer that value to consumers, obviously backed up by the work that, say, Steve does with Parfetts and whatnot, to kind of really kind of get those products to consumers at the right price. and communicated in the right way, where things are going to be tight over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, I think that communications angle around saying to customers, we're on your side here, we are helping, and Rosie mentioned in a section there how we're coming to a very receptive audience there. People already think convenience stores are in the right place when it comes to supporting them with making decisions about managing their money. I'm going to take a slightly different tack now and talk about the colleagues that we employ in the sector. 405,000 people employed in the convenience sector, doing really important work day to day, but that has not been without its challenges. Rob, I'll come to you first. One of the things that people have talked about in the last sort of 6 to 12 months is, COVID's finished now. There's no excuse for not having everyone in back to normal as it was before. How much of a challenge is having enough colleagues in the store, staffing that whole area right through to now, and how it's been over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for lots of us that are office-based, that's been a real challenge. I think for our colleagues in our stores, COVID and the way they worked has been exactly the same. They've been in throughout serving customers, and they're back in now. I think the big challenge we're facing is keeping enough colleagues at the same time. I mean, the market and the demand for colleagues across the convenience sector, across all retail sectors, is enormous, and it's an incredibly competitive environment there. So I think as a business, I think what we really focus on as much as we can is allowing colleagues to do what they love. So I think it's that colleague community link is hugely important. I think because for me they're the same thing. I think you talk about charity initiatives, you talk about kind of specific things, but in my head the real thing that matters is colleagues are your engagement with the community. It's the conversations they have, it's the help they give. It's it's one of the reasons why, if you think about, I worked at Sainsbury's previously where self-checkouts were hugely important. It's something I've not pushed on in McColls because I think the cost benefits are relatively small, but actually the risk of losing some of those customer engagements and customer discussions is quite big, because that's such a critical thing for our colleagues, both in terms of the way we serve customers, the way we attract and retain colleagues. And so I mean, our principle very much is get brilliant people in, give them properly empower them to do the right thing in their communities, do the right thing for customers, and then largely leave them alone with as little intervention as possible to let great people be great. And has that solved everything? Are we 100% staffed across the entire estate? Of course we're not. I don't think anyone is at the moment, and it's it is a real challenge, but that's the approach we're taking.
Yeah, no, so it's a great approach. And Steve Moore, same kind of question really. What challenges have you been facing with colleagues over the last 6 to 12 months?
I think the good thing with independent retailers is they from what I see, their colleagues are part of their extended family, and it's a two-way street. You see a lot where they've supported those colleagues through COVID and beyond. And I think there's a lot of kind of goodwill from their colleagues back to the retailers. I think that's the beauty of independent retailers. We're really adaptable and flexible. And I hear a lot of stories from retailers where they've gone above and beyond to support staff. And again, even now, I'm hearing a lot from them how they can help and support colleagues through cost of living crisis. That's one of the key topics on their minds at the moment. So I think it's kind of been a lot of the store colleagues have really stepped up through COVID and beyond, and it's continued. And I think we're really looking independent retail to have some fantastic colleagues in there.
Yeah, no, brilliant, and good to see that those colleagues are being recognised for the important work they do, because they keep the sector going essentially.
Absolutely.
Aidan, I want to come on to some of the questions that we've got from Slido, and thanks everyone for bringing those questions in for us. First one I want to ask about is about DRS, deposit return schemes, which is coming in Scotland soon, and then England and Wales a little bit later. How much interaction have you had with retailers about the concerns they've got around DRS, the challenges that they're facing, how they're going to manage that with the space that they've got? What are you hearing?
unfortunately, retailers, they've been inundated with concerns and legislation. So it's in England, outside of Scotland, I should say, it's probably taken a little bit of a back seat in terms of what they're saying to us. Retailers in Scotland, yeah, they're concerned about how they're going to implement it in their stores and what support they'll be given. I know the Scottish Grocers Federation, there's some issues over the commissions and the paybacks. I think there's a hope that this will be delayed a little bit longer while we get to grips with HFSS and also the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, no, and on HFSS, I think the big challenge is how ready retailers are. We've been talking about this for a long time now. On a scale of 1 to 10, how ready do you think we are as a sector? Same question, Aidan.
I would say 7. I said there's some that are on it, really, like they're ready to go. Unfortunately, I still get contacted by some retailers who are saying, "What is this? Is this going to affect me?" And you know, I sound flippant when I say that, but it's not funny. You know, even if it doesn't affect them, they need to know this is happening just to make sure that it doesn't affect them. So there's been great communication from the ACS about this and great support out there. But the confusion over the symbol group and the ownership, that hasn't helped matters. And then only a couple of days ago, there might be a backtrack on it. So the government has not helped the independent retailers with this in any way, which has probably caused some of that's why it's 7, not an 8 or 9.
Yeah, sure. Well, with just a couple of weeks to go, 7, given some recent changes in policy, isn't necessarily too bad. So yeah, we've certainly had worse. Rob, I want to come to you. Another question we've had from Slido about view on importance of price marked packs and how that's looking to move in the future. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I personally am not a fan of price mark packs at all. I think it it stops you doing the right thing for the right customers in the right store. I think, if you look at convenience, particularly as a multi-store operator, the biggest challenge you face is if you try and put a one-size-fits-all proposition out there, whether that's pricing, ranging, offers, whatever else it is, you're going to do the wrong thing for the local customers in that community. So I personally don't like anything that restricts your ability to tailor what you do as a business to meet the needs of your customers and your community. I understand why retailers do it. I understand in a world of suppliers do it. I understand in a world of huge inflation, it's a great way of encouraging retailers to keep the prices down at the same time. I think when you look at the conversations happening within retailers and the desire to do the right things for the customer, those conversations are already happening. And I think the pain caused by that lack of flexibility outweighs the benefits of trying to force value to customers when that is very clearly what we're thinking about as retailers already.
Yeah, and we had a follow-up question about what challenges you're facing on ensuring the margin on price mark packs and keeping that sustainable. I think you probably answered that in your answer there. Steve Moore, same kind of question really. Thoughts on price mark packs and usage in the business?
Yeah, interesting. I was having a conversation with a retailer last week who was talking about more non-price mark products being available for him to be able to flex and look at his RSPs. If I'm honest, the majority of our retailers want price mark pack. It's something that we do focus on heavily. So yeah, I get the point, but I think from our perspective, it's something that definitely if our retailers would not be happy if they didn't have that product in place. So price marking in our sector, certainly when I look at our stores and locations, they feel it's really important. And I suppose when you're getting exposed to that across all different cash and carry groups as well, it's something that they're buying into. And if the guy next door is doing something similar, I think that our retailers take the view they need it as well. But I do take the point. Yeah, absolutely. We did have a question about number of second and third generation retailers. We do have an answer for that. I don't have it to hand, but if Rosie is listening and she's in the chat, then please do answer that question for me, because if I don't know, I probably
shouldn't ask the panel because they're probably not going to know either because it's our data. And another question from a supplier to the panel, and I'll start with you again, Rob. How can suppliers help retailers of all sizes to make the right category decisions, to have the best ranges, to keep the business profitable? Are suppliers doing enough, or are you tearing your hair out at some of those conversations at the moment?
And I think that suppliers differ across the entire estate. I think as a what can be done to help, it just comes back to that tailoring point. I think particularly the big FMCG guys have access to a huge amount of data, of insight of what customers are doing across all different locations, types of stores, and that sense. So I think to that point of, again, particularly if you're a multiple retailer, really understanding and helping us understand even better what that customer demand is, what people want, how that differs from location to location, store to store, and helping us tailor the business as much as possible. I think that's the most valuable thing that suppliers can help us with at the moment.
Yeah. And then Aidan, similar sort of question. You deal with both suppliers and retailers in convenience store. How much of a disconnect, if any, is there between what suppliers want to talk about and what retailers want to talk about?
There's always going to be differing agendas, but both have their place. I think, again, I agree with Rob. It can't be a one-size-fits-all approach. Suppliers just need to get their boots on the ground and visit these stores and see what range suits that particular store. I appreciate that's not always financially viable, but they need to come up with a way that they can get to a retailer, analyze their data, analyze the demographic, and make sure they find out what the key demos are in their area, and then they can tailor their approach to that particular store. Retailers, they want the best advice possible from wherever they, if it was suppliers, trade bodies, convenience store.co.uk. So they will, if suppliers are willing to go out there and speak to the retailers and really put the hours in, then that's the agendas start to become more aligned.
Yeah. And Steve Moore, same sort of question. What can suppliers do to help you a bit more during this time?
So again, following the point from Aidan, what we're doing at the moment is we're really engaging with a lot of key suppliers, getting out to store with our retail team. Again, I absolutely agree that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. We've increased our store development team to look at different store segmentation. What's the right range for that store? I think we're probably quite lucky. We work really, really closely with a lot of key suppliers. And I know they've had obviously a period of time out of the business and working from home. We're certainly pushing them to get out into store with us. We have retailer listening sessions in the depots where we bring along suppliers to that to listen to what customers and retailers are telling us. And hopefully we can shape that. So I'd say engaging more at store level with retailers is absolutely critical. Yeah.
And Steve O'Neill, as the supplier, I guess, supplier in the room, to defend yourself, how important is it that you and your business are very close to retailer concerns and responding to that?
Oh, hugely. I think we could all agree that nothing beats actually getting out to a retailer in their store, and you always learn something. You always learn one thing that you can take away and do something with. And it's certainly fed into how we've been approaching things certainly over the last 18 to 24 months. So there's been a lot of listening, a lot of engaging, a lot of feet on the streets, just to sort of kind of visit retailers in their stores and understand what the challenges are, how we can help, and I think certainly we found the same thing. Certainly from what Rob, Aidan, and Steve were saying around there isn't a one size fits all doesn't work anymore. I think that notion, and certainly from the kind of the history of what PayPoint has done, where everything was available everywhere, just it isn't what should be true anymore. Can to cash that I was talking about earlier. Maybe there's 5,000-6,000 stores that's really relevant for and will really work for the local community, but no more. Similarly with Collect Plus, I mean, that's a cracking example where yeah, we've got a network of 28,000, but Collect Plus is just in 10,000 of them. And that's the sweet spot in terms of consumer demand, where there's enough volume coming through that it makes commercial sense for a retailer to kind of have it in their store, that they see the benefit. So I think it's incumbent on us and other suppliers for the sector to kind of, I guess, really listen to retailers, really kind of understand sort of, you know, what makes them tick and what their local communities need. And then almost have a toolbox of solutions and services that we can mix and match for those retailers, so that they can kind of see value of working with us, right? You know, and we've got to work hard for that. Probably we've got to work even harder right now to kind of earn that right to have that conversation and to be in these people's stores, right? So, and we take that very seriously. Yeah,
absolutely. That's it makes a lot of sense. We are coming toward the close. We've had lots of questions. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them, but I'm sure if you speak to the panel afterwards, you know, on social media or email, guys, I'm sure they'll be able to help you out if you have any specific questions. So a two-part question for everyone to finish. I'd love to hear, we've talked about a lot of challenges. I'd love to hear about a reason to be cheerful about the sector. I'm sure there are loads. And one trend that is perhaps underappreciated, or something that's coming down the line, something that retailers or suppliers should be aware of. It could be a product trend, consumer trend, anything you like. I'll keep it flexible. So a reason to be cheerful and a trend. I will start. I'll go around the room clockwise again. So Aidan first.
A reason to be cheerful. It's a silver lining. During financial hardships, people look for treats. So you mentioned earlier on about people searching for coffee near me rather than the coffee machines. So if retailers can get online, make sure their offering is available online, and showcase the treats and maybe the up trading in terms of meal deals, the higher end luxury ranges, where it's suitable for your business. That could be a good way of just, you know, providing, you know, a bit of joy for your community and customers and additional sales for your business. In terms of a trend coming down the line, we're seeing a lot of retailers invest in dessert bars. We've seen Premier Morley last year. They were one of our finalists in 2021, and they spectacular offering. I see a lot more retailers looking at that and thinking, this is perhaps another string to my bow.
So coffee and waffles, good stuff. Steve Moore, same thing. Reason to be cheerful and a trend to look out for in the future.
Reason to be cheerful is, for me, and I think this reflects back from my time in retail, is just retailers' resilience and the way they can innovate and adapt. Certainly from an independent retailer perspective. Listening to our retailers, they're bullish. They're facing into the challenges. They're fully aware of the challenges, but I think they're looking all the time how they can be more resilient, how they can work together. I think that's one thing I've seen a lot is retailers talking together, gathering in cash and carry, having a chat, what's going on, how they can help each other to support them through these times. And backing Aidan up, I think completely food to go. That treat. I think the big weekend is going to come back with a vengeance. Certainly during the winter. Unfortunately, I think people will kind of deflect from eating out and probably maybe going to pubs more and doing it at home. So great opportunity for our sector to really get a hold of that. So reason to be cheerful for me.
Great, that's excellent stuff. And Steve O'Neill, same question.
So, I mean, reason to be cheerful, really. I mean, if you kind of think of, I've said before that I think COVID-19 was the single most effective marketing campaign for convenience retail in the UK in the last 20 years. So I think actually kind of, there's a lot of stores out there that have done a cracking job of retaining that business and retaining those customers. And just as, convenience retail supported local communities during a pretty tough time over the last couple of years, guess what? We've got another tough time coming up, and I reckon convenience retailers are also up for the job, right? So I think actually kind of that resilience that the rest of the panel are talking about, the opportunities that we've got, actually kind of, I think there's a lot of heart and where people will find a way through what's going to be clearly quite a challenging 12 to 18 months. I think in terms of trends, I think for me, probably one of the sort of sleeping giants is around the notion of sort of how you can use digital services sort of within your store. So whether that's tapping into online and e-commerce and sort of helping customers sort of do things online, versus obviously kind of, you know, the sort of various things that people are doing around home delivery. I think at the Heart of the Community panel in 2019, I prophetically sort of talked about home delivery being a sort of opportunity, but I don't think it's anything new, right? You know, I said at the time, you know, kind of my dad used to deliver fruit and veg from a greengrocers in the 60s, right? You know, kind of like, so I think that sort of notion of all the right stores in the right location with the right consumer, I think there's still an opportunity there for retailers to get on board with that and actually kind of, you know, make it a powerful bit of their armory to support their local community.
Yeah, it's like you said earlier, it's not necessarily what you've got, it's what you do with it. It's yeah, the product mix might not change, but the way you get that to customers might be different through online marketing or delivery or whatever it might be. Rob, you've got the difficult challenge of coming up with two things after hearing everyone else. What have you got for us?
Yeah, I mean, reasons to be cheerful are, yeah, look, customers are going to be having a tough time, but we as a sector are structurally brilliantly positioned to solve the problems that customers have. So whether this is the services we offer with things like PayPoint, where people have essential things they are going to do, we are there. So many of the McColls stores are services destinations that just happen to flog some gear at the same time. And I think that's really key to customers because they'll be looking to solve multiple problems in one trip to save money on transport costs. So we're brilliantly positioned for that. Completely agree with Aidan's point on treats as well. We as a sector are the way that the nation treats themselves at small ticket items. So we're set up to do that. And likewise, from eating and consuming calories and food, we're the way that they can reduce food waste by topping up what's a planned weekly shop. So there's huge structural benefits that we have as customers go through a tough time. So that's a good reason to be cheerful. And yeah, future to me, I'm kind of on the trend of personalization is the role of digital, the role of loyalty, the role of you know, personalization with customers, linking that kind of store and digital experience. You know, I don't believe that Clubcard or Nectar is the right thing for a convenience estate, but I think loyalty based around rewarding customers and giving them reasons to come back over and over again is going to get more and more important. And yeah, some of the tech solutions for doing that are pretty exciting coming down the track.
Brilliant. Great. Well, there's lots to go on there. That brings the panel session to a close. I'd just like to extend my thanks to all of our panelists for taking the time, providing some great insights and some great discussion about the convenience sector. Please do use the local shop report as you go on in your businesses throughout the year. Use the physical copy if you can get hold of one, and download the slides from our member portal. I'd also like to thank just everyone that's been part of putting the report together. That includes the team at ACS, Rosie, James, Ed, Sarah, everyone in those teams as well. And of course, to all the secondary sources that we have in the report. And until then, we will see you next time. Thanks very much.